All right, thanks for taking a few minutes to look at this. I've just been thinking lately that we've been spending so much time hanging out online and stuff and having you guys here. Um, and I just wanted to kind of get you something to help you understand me and where I'm coming from a little bit better because sometimes I think that's maybe not completely understood or misunderstood in some way. And anyway, just wanted to go through a short presentation. Um, this isn't going to be really to convince you of anything. Um, I'm not going to try to convince anyone of a political viewpoint and not going to attempt to convince you of a religious perspective. So I won't be doing that here. It's just really an overview of what I think is the most important parts of life. Things that I think are worth, passionate pursuit. So anyway, and of course, an attempt to help you better understand one of your friends. I think that's probably the most important thing here. So again, really appreciate you taking the time to watch this and understand me a little bit better. First of all, without going into any political viewpoints, just what I think is the place of political viewpoints in the grand scheme of things. And to me, American politics is really important. Who our leaders are, what our foreign policies are, the way we govern our country and interact with other countries around the world. Of course, that's incredibly important. But it's not, for me, a top level issue. It's not at the top of the most important things in life. I guess I've put it this way in the past that, focusing on politics to me is a little like focusing on a plumbing problem when the house is on fire. But it's just, I try to keep myself informed and keep up to date with what's going on, just to have a clue about what's happening in our country and around the world. It's something I really didn't do for a long time, and I'm just making an effort to do that now. But again, without going into that any further, that's just where I see political viewpoints fitting in. To me, and I've got the name Ravi Zacharias down there in the corner because this outline is going to be kind of put in a way that he's done it in the past. But the most important questions that we can wrestle with, the things that really matter to us as people and really all people everywhere, is the questions of origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. And so I'm going to talk about these questions, and I'm not even going to attempt to answer them for you. I'm just going to talk about what each question means and why it's important to. Well, I think it's important to wrestle with them, and it's the most important thing to be thinking about. Origin. So the first one, origin. What is our origin as a species? Where did we come from? Are our lives completely random? Are we the result of random, unguided processes, or was there some kind of intelligent force behind our existence? Again, those are important questions. The answers to those questions, can have a huge impact on our life. And, the question of origin is something worth spending time thinking about and looking into. And you may have already answered that question for yourself satisfactorily, or maybe you still wrestle with it. But again, origin, why I'm here, where I came from, is a huge question. Meaning, the second one in the group of four, does life have purpose? Can I find some kind of purpose in my life? Is that purpose just something that I arbitrarily assign it myself? Or is there's something outside of me that gives me purpose? Again, I'm not going to attempt to answer that, just going to kind of define the question. So the next one, morality. And this is really big. Is morality relative? In other words, do we as people decide what is and what is moral? Or is there some standard for universal morality out there? Um, if is it okay to shoot a small child with a shotgun for no reason? And if you say no, and you were the only person in the world that believed that, would just because you were the only person in the world that believed that make it right for everybody else? Is there some standard outside of myself for what's right and what's wrong? The last one is destiny. So what happens at the end of natural life? Um, is death the end of my existence completely? Is that it? Will I completely cease to exist after death? Again, I'm not going to go into trying to answer any of these questions, but I think these questions are incredibly important for everybody to seriously consider and wrestle with. So now I want to go into a couple of things about just basic philosophy. And most of this is really is based on just basic philosophy 101, but I think there's some misconceptions. In fact, I know there's some misconceptions about truth, because truth by definition is exclusive. And what do I mean by that? You have the law of non-contradiction. If truth wasn't exclusive, you couldn't have an intelligible conversation with somebody. Even right now, as I'm speaking, every word out of my mouth has a meaning. And generally, each one of those words and their meaning has a definition that you understand, which is why you understand anything I say. If every word out of my mouth could have several different meanings, it would make it really difficult to, have a conversation with somebody or communicate with somebody. Every time we speak, we make a truth claim. Every time you say something, you're making a truth claim, because you're assuming that every word out of your mouth has meaning, has a very specific definition, and therefore the person listening to you can understand it. And of course, the law of non-contradiction basically saying if you have a qualified statement, it can't be true and not true at the same time. So, for example, if I say my wife is pregnant, and then I say my wife is not pregnant, as long as that's qualified, right? Okay, maybe you're a polygamist and you have two wives, so both of those statements could be true at the same time. But if you were here and Julie was standing next to me, and you say, "Oh, Julie, I heard you were pregnant." If she said yes and I said no, you wouldn't say, "Oh, that's very helpful." You would say, "Oh, either she hasn't told him, or he doesn't know, or something's up here." But just a very simple statement. My wife is pregnant, and then the second statement, my wife is not pregnant. They both can't be true at the same time. Okay, I know that's oversimplified, but if you bring it to sort of looking at truth as it relates to a spiritual matter, let's just take again a qualified statement. The God described in the Quran exists. Okay, so again, that's qualified because you have this big book that describes this particular God. You can't say at the same time that the God described in the Quran does not exist. That's two qualified statements. They both can't be true at the same time. And again, that's just basic logic in the way we are able to communicate and form intelligent arguments and viewpoints. Now, this to me is really important. How people feel. I understand people want to be accepting of others. That's the general viewpoint. It gets uncomfortable to talk about truth because somebody else may not see things the way you do and not agree with your point of truth. But identifying contradictions is not criticism of people. I understand that the heart of most people is to say, well, let's just take religion for an example. I don't want to say that this religion is true because then it excludes another one, and I want to be accepting of those people. I mean, I want to be accepting of all people. I don't think that we should mistreat people because of what they believe. Now, again, we can take that to an extreme. If you believe that you're allowed to come into my house and abuse my family and take my stuff, well, that's different than, a religious perspective. But nobody is inherently bad because of their religion or philosophical perspective. And there's nothing that I'm doing here that is intended to communicate that. It's just to point out that there is truth, and truth by definition is exclusive. So here's one misconception that's out there about philosophical perspectives. And that is the thought that all philosophical perspectives or religions are basically the same. They're just superficially different. Most religions teach you to be good, and they have a God, or, they have a set of rules, and they're generally the same. They're just superficially different. But actually the opposite is true. If we look at the most critical defining points of systems of thought, they're actually diametrically opposed at the most important points, and at best superficially similar. So let's just take two worldviews, for example. Just look at Judaism and Hinduism, and we'll look at them through the lens of these four things we talked about: origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. So, origin. Judaism teaches that there's only one God, and that he created the universe and humanity. Hinduism teaches that there are many gods, and one of them created the universe and humanity. So again, those two things cannot be true at the same time. If the ultimate truth is there's only one God and he created the universe, it can't be true that there are many. Those two things contradict each other according to the law of non-contradiction. Under meaning, Judaism teaches that human beings are equal in God's sight, and each has a unique purpose in his design. Hinduism believes that humans are born into one of four classes, some above others. Now, again, as I'm going through this, I understand that some people would say, okay, you're criticizing one religion, which is why I left Christianity out of it completely. I'm not saying either one of these viewpoints is bad or evil, and that people that belong to them should be mistreated or thought of as stupid or bad. All I'm saying is the reality is these two things, take any two worldviews and look at them through these lenses, and they contradict each other. Let's go to morality. Morality in Judaism is based on commands and laws given by the one God. And in Hinduism, it's based on the concept of dharma given by multiple gods. Again, two things that can't be true at the same time. Judaism, destiny, life after death, believe it or not, in Judaism is ambiguous. Some don't believe in necessarily a heaven or going into God's presence or anywhere else after death. But Hinduism believes staunchly in birth. Every birth is a rebirth, basically, reincarnation. So again, I guess sometimes, for whatever reason, Christianity sort of gets the hit for being that one religion that excludes everybody else. But actually, every single system of thought, no matter what it is, it has defining points that excludes every other system of thought that doesn't agree with that or line up with that. And again, I'm not positing that people that believe something different are bad or should be thought of as stupid or lower, or I'm just trying to point out the reality that every single worldview, every one of them, no matter which one you look at, is exclusive to every other one. And that'll get even a little more obvious here. But here's another sort of philosophical misconception, that there are so many religions in the world, how can a person be sure that one of them is true? Okay. In all actuality, you can take every philosophical perspective that's out there, and it will fall into one of four categories. Okay, it will be either monotheistic, a one God religion like Islam, Judaism, Christianity. It will be, or polytheistic, like Hinduism, Taoism, Mormonism. Okay, there are many gods. Pantheistic. Pantheistic is basically the belief that everything is divine, and divinity is in everything, and I'm in divinity. Again, I'm not, for any one of these categories, I'm not trying to cast a dispersion on them. I'm just pointing out the fact that you can fit every single system of thought that exists into one of these four categories. And then the last one is a non-theistic religion, a religion that either posits that there are no gods or God, or that if there is, it's not important in the overall scheme of things. So ultimately, only one of those four perspectives can be true. Okay, so monotheistic, there is only one God and he is essential. That's what it teaches. Okay. Polytheistic, there are many gods and they are essential. Pantheistic, everything is divine and that divine nature is essential. And non-theistic says there is no God or gods. If there is, the fact is not essential. Okay. So again, if the ultimate truth is that there's no God, because that again is a binary question. Is there a divine being out there somewhere? If the answer is no, then all monotheistic religions cannot be true. No polytheistic religions can be true. Again, if there's nothing divine out there, pantheistic religions can't be true. And the only perspectives that would correspond to reality would be the non-theistic worldviews. But again, so it's not a matter of sifting through the hundreds, if not thousands, of worldviews and seeing which one is true. It's really taking a look at these four categories and seeing which one corresponds ultimately to reality. Another misconception is the power of belief. Okay, something can't be believed into existence. And truth is not dependent on belief. Something can't be believed into existence. If we all got together and said, let's come up with our own religion, and we just kind of didn't matter how long we sat around, and we came up with something, and we made a bunch of truth claims, it wouldn't be true just because we believed it. If I believe that I have $1,000 in my pocket, hopefully that belief is based on the fact that I went to the cash machine and withdrew $1,000 and put it in my pocket. But if there actually is not $1,000 in my pocket, no amount of belief is going to put $1,000 there magically. So again, belief is not a force that brings things into existence. And if something is true, it's not depending on somebody believing in it. Kind of like, you could say you don't believe in traffic, but if you walked out into the middle of the I-4 this afternoon, it wouldn't make all the cars go away. And a couple critical points here. Believing something that is not true can be detrimental. Okay, so for example, if you believe smoking cigarettes is not that bad for your health, well, just because you believe that doesn't make it true. And then not believing something that is true can be a detriment. Okay, the truth is that in my car, the pedal on the left is the brake and it can slow down and stop the vehicle. Now, if I don't believe that, I could be in trouble when the car starts going maybe much faster than 20 miles an hour. So again, just the point that belief itself has no power. There are ultimately answers to these questions that I brought up. Maybe it's difficult or even impossible to discover the answers, but pursuing those answers is really worth an exhaustive effort. To me, those are the things that are worth even losing a little sleep over. And then ultimately, if we find those answers or something that corresponds to reality within those answers, how we respond to them is pretty important. So again, origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. To me, those are the things worth pursuing, the questions worth engaging in conversation over and really sorting out. And everything else is secondary, or, at best secondary, possibly tertiary to that. So anyway, thanks for taking a little bit of time to indulge me here and try to understand where I'm coming from a little bit better.